Hi, I'm Joe Geidel, and welcome back to the Stories by Joe podcast. I appreciate you being here today. Today, we have something a little bit different. I will be sharing my personal stories and life experiences with you here in hopes that through these life experiences and stories being shared, that maybe some of these stories resonate with you. And I do this because I believe that by sharing life experiences and stories, it helps us better understand each other and better understand the world around us. So today I'm here by the Wallkill River because I'm going to be sharing a story about how I participated in my first triathlon, went down the river in a kayak. It's an interesting story. I hope you appreciate it and find some value out of it. And an important feature of the story is our connection with the earth. So with each one of these solo episodes, I want to leave you with a brief meditation. And for this one, a brief meditation that reminds us of the earth is I am earth, I am air, I am fire, I am water, I am. By reflecting on these words, we are reminded of that sacred bond that we have with our planet. You know, we come from the earth, we live on the earth, and we will return to the earth. So it's very important that we are reminded of that bond that we have with the earth as often as possible. And another thing to note with these solo episodes is that I will accompany each one of these life stories and experiences with a expedition, with a little adventure. So for this life story, I'm going to be walking down the Wallkill River region, and I'm going to be sharing that walk in addition to the story. So you'll have some imagery to also reflect on while you're listening to the story, as long as you're watching this on a video format. If you're listening, you'll have to watch the video. So I want to thank you again for listening, watching this podcast today. I hope to be doing more of these in the future, sharing these personal stories and life experiences, because again, I believe that we learn the most about each other and about the world when we share our life stories and experiences. So again, thank you for being here today. I hope you have a great day, and thanks. So today I want to tell you about the story about how myself, my boss, and a coworker, we all entered into a triathlon together and as a team, as for our company. And I was a little nervous because I never experienced a triathlon, never entered one, never competed in a triathlon, never been the most athletic person around. I was more so interested in reading and education, but also exploring too. That was always a big thing with me, is exploring the world. But when it comes to athleticism, not the greatest for me, not my strongest feature of who I am. So when my boss came over to me and said, you know, do you want to do this triathlon? I was thinking to myself, you know, because I like to experience things I've never experienced before and try to make the most of life. So I figured, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's do the triathlon. And it was a momentary decision. I just decided in that instance, I'm going to go for it. And so I said, yeah, I'll do it. And he was like, okay, that's great. We'll mark you down. And then I walked back to my desk and was like, oh boy, oh no, what did I get myself into now? I'm going to have to get ready for this triathlon. Oh my gosh. So ultimately we decided, our team, my boss, my coworker, who's also his sister-in-law, we decided that we were all going to do individual parts of the triathlon. So I kind of got out of it easy in a way. Instead of having to do the whole triathlon, I would only do 1/3 of the triathlon. So, still some athletic effort involved, but not as much as what would have been. So I had to choose. Am I going to run? Am I going to bike ride? Or am I going to do the kayaking portion? And I actually own a kayak of my own. So I was like, okay, I could do the running. I definitely did not want to do the bike riding. I don't like bike riding uphill. It's something that I'm not, again, talking about the athleticism here, not really good at bike riding uphill. I could run and I can kayak, but that's, with the bike riding, I'm not a fan of that. I guess we all have our preferences in life. So ultimately, went with the kayak. And what's funny about that is I've had this kayak for years. I got it for a Christmas one year from my parents. I'm very thankful for that. I've always wanted a kayak because I love being out on the water. I've had many experiences in life where I've been out on the water kayaking with my mom, out on boat rides with my friends, where we rented out a boat and went on a couple lakes. And I've always enjoyed the sense of serenity that comes from being on the water. It's almost like a feeling of being baptized. It's like being on the water to me is like a homecoming. It's an interesting feeling. But what's funny is that when I got the kayak, I never took it out on the water. And I don't know, maybe it's one of those things where when you have something, you ultimately take it for granted. And when you don't have it, you really want it. But then when you do have it, you kind of forget about it. This happens a lot in life. I notice that we're living for the future, and yet we're not living in the present. So when I wanted that kayak, I was living for a future with a kayak, and it was very excited to use the hypothetical kayak in the future. And yet, when the moment arrived and I got the kayak, I never took it out at all because I was more concerned at the time with just the idea of the future. But then when you're faced with the reality that what you want is now arrived, a lot of times we just don't grasp the moment. We don't arrive at the destination that we dreamed about because we're so obsessed with materialism and living in the future, and we're so obsessed with an idea of living in the future. So, to get back to the story, finally, I finally have a chance to take the kayak out and use it. I mean, I had many opportunities to. I mean, I even fitted my car with the racks and to be able to transport the kayak, and never did it. Never did it at all. But now I had the opportunity. I dedicated myself to participating in this triathlon and with my company. So I was definitely committed at that point. There's no turning back now. So I didn't do anything to prepare, really. I told myself, oh man, I'll exercise to get ready. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, if you're kayaking on a lake, or a river or any other body of water, in order to practice, you really have to be in the water. And I was really concerned about putting the kayak on the roof and doing all that, so I just left it to last minute, which I do with a lot of things in life, is not a good quality. And the day arrived, however many weeks later, after we all decided we were going to participate. The day arrived, and we went out to the Wallkill River in Montgomery, New York. And it was rainy that day, and there's overcast, and so there's water everywhere. The water coming from the sky, water in the river, and the race begins. The triathlon begins, and my teammates, they start participating, going on the bike, running. The moment arrives for me, finally, to participate and get my kayak in the water. So I start getting in the kayak. They push me into the water. They push me into the river, the Wallkill River. And I go. I start paddling. I'm in the river, surrounded by the water. The water's coming from the sky. The water's below me. And I'm overcome with this sense of deep serenity and inner peace that I've experienced so many times before while being on the water. I think of the times when I was kayaking with my mom and when I was out with my friends on the water. I think about the times when I was a kid and I had an inflatable raft and I went in the creek behind my childhood home, and my friends and I would go down the creek in the raft, and life was so brand new. You have eyes of wonder towards the world, and at some point throughout your life, those childhood eyes of wonder begin to face a world of pain and struggle. They begin to see reality as human beings have interpreted it for so long. But when you begin to live in the moment, like I was living in the moment on that kayak in the Wallkill River during that triathlon, those childhood eyes of wonder begin to open again, because everything is so fresh, everything is crisp, and every single moment is so new and brings such an intensity to it. Not intensity in a way where it's a struggle, but the fact that each and every moment is this condensed, beautiful infinity wrapped into a single instance, an instance that is infinite. It's so amazing. There's not really any word to describe that feeling other than unity and oneness. Perhaps those words are some of the best when it comes to describe that feeling. So the water is below me. The water is coming down from the sky. It's raining. I begin to have this sensation that I am water, that literally everything around me is water. The world is water, everything. And, I begin to associate myself with that river, with the Wallkill River. The Wallkill River is a very sacred place to me. I was born very close to the Wallkill River in Middletown, New York. And I've spent most of my life along the banks of the Wallkill River. I and the Wallkill River became one in that moment. And that feeling of oneness is indescribable. You know, I think we all have that connection with reality. It arrives in different ways for us all. We all relate to reality in different ways. We all relate to the universe in different ways. But that common feature of our shared experience is the same for us all. You know, I think the truest part of our being, if you want to describe it as the truest part of our being as the soul, is that everything is united as one constant, as one experience. And it's an awesome experience. It's an awesome life. And I would love to live in that moment as much as possible. And I think the mission in life, the purpose of life, is to identify with that experience as much as possible, to understand our unity and attain the moment as close as we can. I think that's what many people have called nirvana, or the kingdom of God, paradise. It's funny, paradise is around us all the time. The experience of paradise is solely dependent on our ability to perceive it. So, going down the river on that day, on that triathlon day, I got a lot more than just an exercise. I was able to see the universe as it is. And that's a moment that I'll treasure forever. Eventually made it back after kayaking down the river one way, turned around, came back, got out the kayak, and climbed back onto the shoreline. There was mud everywhere. There was mud all over me, mud on the ground, because everything was just all wet at this point. And, you know, typically I would probably be annoyed that all my clothes were wet and muddy, but I didn't even care. I didn't care. It was right. It felt right. It felt natural to just be completely surrounded by water, have the water on me. It felt so natural just to have the mud and the mud on me too. And my boss, my coworker, and I, we all just laughed. We laughed because it was, we were very glad to have completed the triathlon. The rankings really didn't matter to us, but we were all grateful for the experience and grateful for that moment. My fiance, Steph, was there to support me. And after the race was over and we all went our separate ways, Steph and I put the kayak back on the top of the car, ratcheted it down, started driving, and eventually made it back home. But, you know, ultimately, we're always home. I was at home in the Wallkill River. I was at home in the car ride. I'm at home now, and I hope everyone gets to experience those moments of home as much as possible. and I hope you're at peace today. This is Joe Geidel. Peace and love. Thank you.